Ever wonder why some people thrive under pressure while others break? It's not luck, it's science. Welcome to the Mind Performance Podcast. I'm Lindsay Paoli, a therapist and a mental performance strategist. Each episode, you'll get expert insights, real stories from high performers, and small shifts that lead to big results, so you can be better at what matters. Let's dive in. Welcome back to the Mind Performance Pod with Lindsay Paoli. I'm Lindsay Paoli, and we're here for episode 4. We've made it through launch, guys, and I cannot thank you enough for all of your support, all of your comments and messages and feedback. I so appreciate you, and nothing has motivated me more to make sure that this podcast feels like relevant and helpful and honestly just like really personal to you guys than having these conversations with you guys. So today we're going to be talking about AI and the effect that it has on our brains, on our businesses, and on our children. And this is part of a series that I want to create that I haven't named just yet, but essentially like a thinking from my perspective type podcast where I'm going to take a really popular topic and break it down from a therapist perspective and how it impacts both business and your life at home. So today we'll be diving right into thoughts on AI and ChatGPT. And this is like a massive discussion, I think, for most people right now. So let's go ahead and dive into it, shall we? So AI is everywhere, and I see people panicking and also relate to the idea that it's something that we don't know, we can't predict, and that is scary. However, from the other side of things, I like to consider this the way that the internet was introduced, and essentially the idea that it was unknown and was unregulated, very similarly to AI currently. And people weren't sure what the future would look like with it. But just with anything in life, you can't start regulating and understanding what works and doesn't work until it's already out of the bag. And quite frankly, AI is the toothpaste out of the tube. There's no putting it back in the tube. And so just like with anything in life and business, being adaptable and open, I think, are the keys to mastering AI and allowing it to be your greatest tool. Could you imagine living without the internet at this point? Most people couldn't survive. Honestly, that's my husband's like goal in life, is to have a flip phone and not need the internet. But aside from that, most of us could not get away with not using the internet. And similarly, I believe that AI will be the same, and regulations and a clearer understanding of that will have to come. So I'm going to kind of break this down from a therapist perspective, a business owner perspective, and a mental performance strategist who works with corporations, and then a mother's perspective. So bear with me. There is a lot to unpack here and really to discuss. And honestly, just to make sure that I'm staying on task here, I've got my AI notes to keep me bulleted and succinct, hopefully. Hang on. Whoa. Speaking of ADHD, I totally forgot to mention that while I so appreciate you guys giving feedback, one of the things that I have learned from your feedback is that I need better video. And I mean, I knew that. I told you guys in episode 1, like, we're just taking messy action. And then I'm getting the clips of my podcast to post to Reels. And I'm like, you guys, why do I look like a cartoon? Like, the video quality is terrible and so blurred. So we're updating and trying new things. And I told you guys that I'm bringing you right along with me. And so one of the things that I'm trying today is StreamYard. I was recommended either StreamYard or Riverside.fm. And the video seems to be better with StreamYard. I'm on free trials of both of them. I'm not affiliated, but I am open to partner brand detail or partner collaboration once I decide which one I have decided to go with. And I'll keep you guys posted too, because again, the goal is that we're learning together right alongside one another. All right, that was a crazy aside, but let's go back. So From the perspective of a therapist, let's discuss AI. I'm just going to get comfy. I think that I've considered starting to do these from my bed and not overthinking making this look super professional, but we'll see. We're figuring out our branding. All right. From a therapist perspective, obviously, it's a little concerning to see the impact that AI has on people. We know that over the last few years, especially after COVID, there has been an increase in social isolation, remote work, and increased screen time is making us a lot more disconnected rather than connected, which was the goal of social media. But it's kind of working against us. And AI is now just another thing to steal our attention and our potential connection. You have likely heard stories, just like I have, about people who are using AI as a therapist or a coach, and in worst case scenarios have been encouraged to follow through with suicide or to do other bad, harmful things. And that is obviously a very clear indication that AI should not be your therapist. AI should never be the replacement for true human connection. I made a joke on social media a while ago, I dare AI to take over my job and the human capacity that's required. And I say that now, and I'm also open to the fact that a year from now, 5 years from now, there may be a lot more sentient or emotional capabilities of AI, but right now that does not exist. But sadly, truly, a lot of people are so isolated and so connected to their phones and devices that is their natural turning point. That's where they're naturally going to answer any and all questions about their existence, how they should be doing things, processing really in-depth things that a computer should not be in control of giving advice over, like family dynamics or your personal thoughts. I do use AI as a therapist and have recommended within my group mastermind, the Rewire, in a training how to improve your habits. And for example, I use it for meal planning. Nothing to me is more exhausting than going through an entire day and then deciding, okay, now what am I going to cook for dinner that is healthy, gluten-free in my case, which is such a hurdle, something that the kids will eat and something that my equally picky but growing every day husband will also eat. I just don't have the mental capacity for that. And so something that I found very helpful is our skylight. So I know that you've seen influencers using skylights on social media, and it's just this little electronic calendar, but it does so many other things. We use it for our kids' chores. We share our calendars together so that we can see who's doing what and assign pickup and drop off and figure out doctor's appointments or who's available or who's in a meeting. And what I also learned is you can use the AI feature on Skylight to plan your meals in advance. Not only that, but also plan your grocery list, which is also an app on your phone, and constantly add to that grocery list. So once you do the AI food generation, literally saying, hey, I'm gluten-free. I need a meal. I need 5 dinners this week to feed myself, my kids, and my husband. My kids are 6 and 7, so consider that kids are picky, but I also want to be healthy. What are 5 recommendations? And they'll knock out 5 delicious recipes and how to cook them and what exactly to buy and generate the shopping list for you that you can then edit throughout the week. So again, I'm not sponsored with Skylight, but it's something that I've actually thoroughly found to be worth the purchase price. And we bought it during Prime. So highly recommend. But you can also just use ChatGPT to do these things. The same with thinking about workouts. I am not always great at planning a workout. It's why I love group fitness, but I could also just as easily create a more consistent routine through using ChatGPT. So all this to say that there's pros and cons of everything. And I think that there are a lot of opportunities for using AI healthily and to improve your health. I was going to say, and thinking, but I don't know. I think that that's where I would draw the line. I don't know that I would use it to challenge and try to upgrade my thinking. I think that that is where the line is drawn, and that is where a professional comes in. And I'm trying to think if this is ego saying this, an expert who has training in understanding the mind, because it's just a very vulnerable thing. We all saw the coaching community take off during COVID also. And so we saw how harmful it can be for unqualified people to give unqualified advice and what harm that can do. The same can be done with AI. And that doesn't make it bad. It just means that, as with everything else, you need to have very clear limitations. Oh, just the concept of being adaptable is such a important mindset. And so I was saying earlier that, the toothpaste is out of the tube. There's no putting the toothpaste back in the tube. And so being open to that and being aware of that is crucial to moving on and evolving. The more fearful we are of things, the more they keep us stuck. And that's going to kind of segue us into business, where I think, again, I keep coming back to COVID because obviously it was such a pivotal time for all of us, especially in the mental health arena. But the fear can be really overwhelming and keep you stuck and can become unhelpful. And so I cannot emphasize enough the importance of being adaptable as a strength. So, which is going to segue us into the business aspect of using AI, because I think that the premise is true in all three of these categories that I'm going to talk about: therapy, business, and motherhood. I think that the biggest takeaway when we're talking about AI is that AI is a great tool for administrative tasks, but I don't think that it will ever be able to replicate or replace the ability for human empathy, human connection, and the importance of that. And as soon as you start dipping your toe into expecting it to do that, that is where problems arise. So with that being said, let's go ahead and start talking from the business perspective, the importance of getting on board, being adaptable, and starting to use AI, because AI is going to put some businesses out of business, quite frankly, especially the businesses that are not open to adapting and flowing with it. So I had a really great request from a company earlier this month, and they were in the event space. So they were like, we know that everybody is going to be using AI. We want to be the first to adapt to AI and use it for administrative tasks and streamline all of our processes on the back end that don't require human connection. But what we do know that we're going to get better at in order to set ourselves apart as in the industry is we're going to fine tune and be the best at human connections, because that is not something that AI will ever be able to replace. So we're not trying to remove anybody in our business. We're trying to maintain all of the jobs and skill sets that are there, but we want them to have a better emphasis and focus on a lot of the small, soft skills of human connection that not all businesses have mastered, because it takes a lot of time and energy to do the administrative work. So for example, if we're talking sales, it's great to remove all of the energy that's required for just tracking your clients. Instead, you get to focus all the energy that the administrative task is being taken off your plate and allowing for to put into the relationships, to spreading your relationships as far as possible, to meeting more people, to meeting more vulnerably, connecting more deeply with them, building true, honest relationships, knowing the human psychology of buying and selling, understanding the objections to price points and being able to navigate that more freely. Removing the need for the administrative energy allows for more energy going into all of these skills. And I was so impressed because I hadn't thought of it that way. But that applies for all businesses, whether it's finances, which I think I hear a lot of clients in finance that are terrified of AI replacing them. And I don't know about you, but I am not going to just trust a computer with anything. For me, human connection is so important. Like, I even hate doing the self-checkout. I want somebody there. So I'm certainly not going to just trust a computer with my finances, especially when I feel like there's so much to talk through as an entrepreneur. So people in finance, people in design, people in whatever industry you're in. If you have not mastered the skills of communication, empathy, understanding emotion, leadership, then you are going to be in a disadvantage and be one of those companies that get replaced and taken off the map. So that's what I wanted to say about that. Where I see AI being problematic in business is, again, where you try to use AI in replacement of the human connection. So nothing pisses me off more than calling to ask for help with, I don't know, a flight, a credit card, a fucking, I don't know, a bill. Anybody that I call and ask for tech support, any sort of like tech platform, if I get that auto generated robot AI, I am fucking livid. I'm so mad. You've taken me from an unhappy customer to a pissed off customer. And I can't be alone in that. Nothing pisses me off more than making the effort to call and talk to a human and being given what is very clearly a robot, an AI generated robot. And I think that most people agree that removing the human connection in those places only frustrates customers. And I think that using AI, again, in place of human connection will only do harm to businesses. But what's tricky now is you can't always tell right off the bat that it's AI, right? It takes a minute to discern whether it's like a real person or AI. But now I've gotten to the point where I call and I'm like on the lookout, right? You're like, are you a real person or are you AI? And I know, I mean, it's evolved so much over the last few years. It's getting trickier. So I actually was looking for an apartment complex for my mom to move into, and I forgot my ID there when I went to go tour the place. And so I called to try and get my ID. And I thought for a moment I was talking to a real person. Like, it was so good. I was so impressed, And then I was like, oh, this is a robot. But this is like the best robot I've ever heard, because they're like rephrasing my questions back to me. You know what it was? There was manufactured background noise in this freaking recorded call. I was so impressed. Even when I figured out it was a robot, I was like, okay, this is the best AI customer service I've ever received. And they were like, okay, Lindsay, I just want to confirm, like, you left your ID here and you'd like somebody to call you back. I'm so sorry that nobody's available right now. I'm going to go ahead and leave that message. Is there anything else I can do for you? And I was like, no, this has been amazing. Thank you. And I wanted to, when I spoke with somebody, commend them on their AI generated fucking customer service, which I've never wanted to do ever in my life. But I come from a customer service background in hospitality, so I'm always on the lookout for it. And that was great. My interaction was great. But guess what happened? Just like happens all of the time with AI, it says it's going to do something and it never follows through. So the next day, I call and I get the same recording and I still haven't heard back. And I was like, they haven't texted, they haven't called, and I'm talking to this fucking robot, and this is not good customer service anymore. All I needed to do is follow through. And then when I did finally, I went in person to speak to a human being, and he's like, oh, we never got a message. So there's a lot of work to be done in AI to improve business aspects. But my rule of thumb, I think best practices right now for businesses are to use it for administrative tasks. Don't use it for any customer facing experience, because I don't know a single person that prefers interacting with a human being. Maybe that's my age. Maybe that's a millennial thing. I wonder if Gen Z would disagree with me. Maybe we'll have to get a Gen Z interview on here. So ways that I use AI in my business are a lot. So I'll be candid that I use ChatGPT. I know there's so many platforms. I would call myself like not an early adapter. What's like the mid-range one where you're like hesitant at first and then you're like, okay, we've got to do this. I'm not a late adapter. I'm definitely not the last on board. I'm like second or third onboarding group. But ChatGPT is all I'm comfortable doing. I know there's so many others. Anyways, and I like ChatGPT now because you can organize your files based on different areas. So hell, I'm in here right now. Let me tell you what I have. I essentially assign my ChatGPT as employees within my business. I am a solo run business. It's just me and two contracted assistants, one for design essentially, and one for social media and other tasks. And everything else is done by me. So I use my chat GPT essentially as employees. So I have a podcast expert that helps me to generate SEO for my podcast, to help me generate ideas and structure to be consistent, launch emails it has helped me with, etc. So I have my podcast assistant. I have a social media assistant that helps me to create content with certain prompts that I use based on the marketing that I'm learning from my coach. And so I input all of this marketing information and I say, let's generate content based on this, this, and this. And so it has been helpful in that. And we're getting more and more consistent every day, though it's still a work in progress. I use it for generating course offerings. I have a course writer where it just helps me to kind of refine my courses. What else do I have that's an actual designated folder here? Oh, and a blog writer, helping me to write a blog specifically with, again, SEO. And now, by the way, if you didn't know, you don't need just SEO. What you need is, what do they call it? It's like AI optimization, which is a totally different format than like Google SEO. So if you didn't know, now you know. But I use it for all kinds of other things too. I used it to help me plan Dollywood with my family. I will say that I try not to give personal information of my own, or obviously any of my clients' information, whether it's name or even like specifics about their, just like identifying specifics, because you've still got to be discerning with it. I'll ask it. Sometimes I'll ask it to like analyze my dreams, but I don't say that it's mine. I say that it's my client's dream just because I don't want it knowing too much about me. I refuse to name it or get personal. I've asked like questions about the AI, but yeah, I'm still hesitant with this whole process. And I'm also aware that this could be a bad thing if it's not regulated and overseen appropriately over time. So I don't know if that's best practices, but that's my recommendation to you is like, certainly don't be giving it all your identifying information. Maybe I'm just like a aluminum hat wearing person in that. But what I mainly use it for, what I found it to be super helpful for, is just brainstorming. Like I've always said that it's so hard to be a solopreneur in business because there's nobody just to kind of like throw ideas at and help to organize my thoughts. When you consider the executive dysfunctions of ADHD, or just the executive functions and the strengths and weaknesses you have in each of them, one of them for ADHDers is organization, obviously. And so it's organization of my thoughts. Like I can think really big picture, and then I'm not very good at creating a sequence of events to bridge the gap from A to B. And so I use AI a lot to do that. Like I have this big, broad, general idea. How do I get from here to here? And so that's been really helpful. It's also been really, really helpful for like writer's block, or helping me to organize my thoughts in a way that I better communicate. So if you're also ADHD, or you just struggle with like just getting it done, like I don't want to stare at the screen trying to figure out the best way to say it for a long time, because we're making decisions quickly. We only have so much time. I'm running both a business and a family and managing clients. Like I don't have time to just stare at a screen blankly. And so ChatGPT really helps me to just get started on a lot of things. And I'll also caveat that to say, like, then I do a lot of editing after the fact. Like it's going to help me get the general ideas. But if you've used AI, you know that they are very generic general ideas. And they get better and better the more you learn how to prompt, and the more you train it. The more you continue using your AI, the more you're training it in your voice and in your thoughts and in your business. So that's something to consider, is like really take your time building your AI. But yes, it's been very helpful to have it and then to edit and refine it after the fact. And I do a lot of even editing the prompts. Maybe we could do, if you're interested, let me know if you're interested in like a training on prompting your AI and then refining the prompt and then refining the prompt and then editing it after the fact to say exactly what you want to say in your words. But you can get pretty damn close with AI the more you train it and the better you've built a skill out of it. All right, that is a lot on business. So it's one thing to say I'm not terrified of AI personally. It's another to say I'm not terrified of AI for my children who are going to see an entirely different generation of this and who are already raised in a world where it is everywhere. And so my concern level is very different from a business and therapist perspective than it is from a parent's perspective. If you know anything about me, I'm already one of those moms that like doesn't allow devices in her home. We've been very strict on like tablets. I don't like my kids even watching like YouTube where it's just rapid fire short clips and sometimes it goes into like weird things. I don't like unboxings and like a lot of just bullshit that YouTube, even YouTube kids tends to feed. I don't think that it's good for their brains. And similarly, I think that I have to raise them in a world to be open to AI while also being aware and cautious of AI, the same way that we do with screens in any other capacity. And my kids are 6 and 7. They don't have their own tablets. They don't watch YouTube for the most part, unless it's like really monitored. And they still know an AI video when they see it. So I should say they don't like unassisted. They don't have their own devices, but we do have a bad habit. I have a bad habit of we wind down the night watching what we call satisfying videos. And it's essentially just like, I don't know, a lot of like kids getting turned is one of my favorite pages. And it's literally, this sounds awful. It's kids getting hurt. But like then it's always like they're fine, but kids bounce back and my kids love it. That's why I love it. It's not me. My kids think it's hilarious. We watch a lot of puppy videos, a lot of cat videos, and a lot of, I don't know, Addie loves slime. I don't love slime. And those types of videos that she loves, like colorful slime and like the sounds that it makes. And ugh, I don't. But that's the satisfying video, like part of it. So we'll go and we'll put on my Instagram usually. It's like the three of us and Tony also usually watches along. We'll be on my explore page looking for satisfying videos. And they're already really loving like the AI babies that talk. And I thought I had to explain to them that this is not real, this is AI. But then they started coming home saying, oh, this is an AI video because they also have tablets at school, which is a big change that we've had since we've moved to Florida, is that they require tablets at their school. And I was not so happy about that. But also, you know, they're going to school and socializing with kids and they're in aftercare, and not every other parent has a rule about no tablets. So my kids are seeing what other kids are seeing. And so they're coming home saying, oh, that's AI. And so we've talked about like what is AI in like very general terms, because like I said, they're 6 and 7. And essentially I explain it as like it's a computer that can make things, but it's not human. And so they love like watching the babies talking, or there's a lot of like mixed animals, like animals mixed with fruit to go with your birth month. They love those videos. And they're also aware that that's AI. There's other things where I can tell that they're very discerning, where they'll tell me. So a lot of like cat videos are like dog and baby videos. Now, like it's hard to tell. I would argue most boomers would not be able to tell that it's an AI video, but my kids will be like, oh, that's AI because it's unrealistic or it's too funny or they can see the glitches. And so it's just interesting as a mom to notice like how aware of this they already are, how this is already a part of their lives in a way that this did not exist for us prior to 5 years ago, just like the internet did not exist for us. We had no other like point of reference for any of this before, I was in middle school, and they're being raised from an early age to live in a world where the toothpaste is out of the tube and everything is AI, and their little brains are already learning how to mitigate it, which is wild. I was watching a video with Brene Brown the other day, though, and she's my favorite, where she was talking about, the story of how Steve Jobs was asked about how his kids like the iPad. And he was like, my kids don't have iPads. And that's another big reason that we have been deviceless for as long as we have, is having become aware of how many executives in the tech industry don't allow these screens, devices, platforms for their children because they know how harmful they can be. And so they withhold them for as long as possible before, inevitably the world will take over and the child will become independent and they get access to it. But Steve Jobs was originally asked way back in the day how his kid liked the iPad, and he was like, my kid doesn't have the iPad. And so Brene Brown was talking about a similar story where she's in these rooms with all of these big tech developers. And, I think it was something along the lines of somebody had asked one of these big CEOs, like, what do you use your chat GPT for? Or how do you spend your day? Do you end up on your AI all day, just like the rest of us do now? And he said something along the lines of like, no, we don't talk tech. We don't use this. We keep our discussions purely about philosophy and art and, studying, again, all of these soft human skills that tech is throwing the opposite in our face. And essentially, it's as though she was implying that the smarter, more wealthier caste is intentionally keeping us dumb and distracted and attached to these tools while they evolve and maintain humanity. And I mean, that's a really big question. Does AI replace humanity as we know it with the arts and philosophy and these discussions that can't be generated through technology and can only be generated through true human emotion? So a little philosophy for you there. So the same thing for your children, maybe some best practices from a mental performance perspective and a therapist and parent perspective is encourage your children. I don't think that you can keep them away from it, or at least not forever. So the more prepared and educated they are, the more conversations you're having about it, I think the better. But that doesn't mean that they have to have access to it. They don't have to have permission to use it. And I know that they will, especially at a certain age, get their hands on it. So the more you're having open discussions about the fears that you have about it, about what's harmful about it, as well as what good it can do, and prepare them with why this can be useful. I really don't have a reason for my kids to be using AI at first and second grade. But I would imagine by I want to say fifth grade, but I'm probably being delusional. They're probably going to be, using it long before then, just because of the nature of technology and how quickly it evolves. I want my kids to go in to it with as much discernment and precaution as possible, while also understanding how to leverage it for good. And I think that that is the parenting takeaway, is don't avoid talking about it. I mean, that's just a parenting hack for anything, for any hard conversation, is don't avoid the conversation. We were talking in the car the other day, my husband and I, about one of the best pieces of advice that we got from his parents when our kids were babies. And they said, don't talk to them like babies. Talk to them like they're adults for their entire lives. Like, have philosophical conversations, ask them their thoughts, their fears, and have true discussions with them, because they're capable and they're aware. And the more that you don't talk about something, the more the fear will build in them. And so I think it's really important to have these conversations and then to have really strict boundaries around this type of technology. So if they have access to it, making sure that you're monitoring their content and setting boundaries. I mean, I have boundaries for screen time, but having boundaries for AI is something that we're going to have to consider. Like, how much time do you get in Chat GPT? And what are they going to use it for? I mean, I think at this point, it's fair to say that AI is replacing the Google search engine, just like we were talking in the business aspect of this. Making things AI searchable is because most people I know use AI before they use Google to ask a question. So if your kids are doing research or need help with a math problem, yeah, I'm trying to think of what your kids would use it for. And that would 100% be it. I would love to hear your guys' thoughts. Let me know on social media your thoughts on this as parents, because mine are so young that I guess I haven't really entered into this as being a true concern to teach them how to use it as a tool. But that would be my recommendations, is to let them see it as a tool, but not the tool. And just like we said with therapy and business, knowing when it's an appropriate tool and when it's not. Like, AI is not going to be a friend replacement. It's not going to help you navigate uncomfortable social situations at school. It cannot replace human connection. That is where it gets scary, but it can help you with the administrative tasks or the startup of maybe reports for school, etc. Honestly, though, I don't think that you can for school use it for reports now, because it's then considered like a plagiarism aspect. I don't know. This is all open for discussion, and like, you guys are growing right along with me. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Like I said, we're just dipping our toe into considering this, but even if your children are very, very young, like I said, you would be surprised at how aware and conscious of these types of things that kids are. I'm surprised that at 6 and 7, without access to unlimited screen time and devices, that my kids can differentiate an AI video from a regular one. And that can get scary when you're considering like AI chats, or I guess all of these other things that we have to look forward to. Whew, not fun stuff. All right. So, in closing, my thoughts are that with anything that's newly introduced, there's good and there's bad. I think fearing change is inherently human, but also one of the greatest ways to stay stuck and feel unproductive and become isolated over time, because we are meant to evolve and change tribally. And if you don't get on board, eventually, at some point, there will be a negative consequence. And I think that the same will apply with humans who refuse to use AI or choose to stay stuck or fearful of it, instead of learning how to use it to its advantage. From a therapist lens, like, certainly don't be doing therapy with AI. It can be helpful for note taking, but as a normie, a layman, I certainly would never recommend you asking questions you would ask your therapist to AI. This goes right into the mind fundamentals and deep connections. And if you're in the practice of that every day, if you're finding yourself needing to ask AI certain questions, that is your challenge to consider who in your friend group or your circle could you be asking instead. And if it feels too uncomfortable to ask, that's good. It should not feel more comfortable to ask a unregulated and concerning piece of technological equipment a vulnerable question than it does a human being. And discomfort is not a bad thing. It's an indication of growth. From a business lens, AI has the ability to streamline companies and make more millionaires than ever before and more successful businesses. It also has the capacity to put a lot of businesses out of business if people don't adapt and learn to use it to their advantage. The number one takeaway I want you to hear as a business owner is that learning to use AI is going to help you to become more profitable. But more importantly than that, learning how to refine your human connection systems and customer service and leadership skills is really what's going to set you apart, because everybody's going to adapt to AI, but not everybody is going to get really good at the emotion aspect because there's still such a stigma about it. And this is a shameless plug for the work that I do. If you are interested in learning about services that I offer for your team or for your leaders to do just this, let me know. And from a parenting lens, this theme is still the same. Teach your children that AI is neither good nor bad, and both good and bad, just like everything in life. Teach them to be discerning, but curious. Teach them with very strict limitations and with open and honest conversation, because they're going to find out from you or from somebody else, and you want it to be coming from you with very clear guidelines as to what is appropriate or not, so that they are being the influencer in their group of social influence rather than being influenced by somebody whose parents are maybe not being as discerning or as open. That is all I have for today. Help me think of a name for this little thought leadership discussion on important topics. And I'm going to sign off for now. I appreciate you being here. As always, please leave a review, especially in these early phases. The more you share your reviews, like tapping those 5 little stars or however many stars you think I deserve, it takes none of your time and it means the absolute world to me and my message. And if you want to take it a step further, leave a written review. It will help me to, again, gain more ground and more listeners. And I so appreciate you. I can't wait to hear your thoughts on this and discussions via social media. And stay tuned for next Tuesday's next episode. Bye-bye. We need a sign off. Thanks for listening to the Mind Performance Pod. If you got value today, make sure to subscribe and leave a quick review. It really helps others find the show. As a thank you, grab your free Mind Fundamentals Compounding Consistency Habit Tracker at the bottom of the homepage on lindsaypaoli.com. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Mind Performance Pod for tips, updates, and behind-the-scenes content. Can't wait to see you in the next episode.